We have a guest joining us now in the studio. He is Dr. Kipkirui Langat. He is the Director General of the TVET Authority. TVET again, Ndu?
Technical Educational Vocational Training.
Fuatanisha.
Oh, you want me to
TVET.
VET. V is
T.
vocational. Education. Training.
Now add the A of Dr. Langat's body.
What do you mean add the A?
TVETA. It's not TVETA. He is not the Director General of TVETA. No. He's the Director General of TVET Authority. And that's a regulator. Dr. Langat, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you very much.
Asante sana for joining us in the hot seat of the Situation Room. How is it? Comfortable?
Good.
Very good.
So far.
Very good.
Yeah.
CT has the day's proverb to welcome you to the show. And this week's proverbs will be from?
South Africa.
South Africa.
Yes.
Okay.
If you start looking for flies in your food, it means you are full.
What does it mean?
Umeshiba. Anza kutafuta inzi kwa chakula. Umeshiba.
You're trying to get an excuse not to eat.
Thank you. Thank you. You've got it.
Yeah.
As they say in Kiswahili, unatafuta kisababu. Najua kuna dalili. Naona mabawa hapa ya inzi. Inzi yenyewe sioni. Eat the food.
Natafuta kisababu kupitia kiulizo.
Kupitia kiulizo. What do you think the South Africans are saying with this?
Well, I think when you have an opportunity, take advantage of that opportunity. Don't try to ask or find out why this opportunity is existing and why no one else has looked at it other than you. Yeah.
If it's yours, it's yours.
Yeah.
Take advantage of it.
Take advantage of it.
But you still have it.
Yes.
Last week, we had a conversation with the Principal Secretary of the State Department for TVET.
Yes.
And now you are the Director General of TVET Authority. So we know what TVET is.
Yes.
What is the authority?
Well, the authority, and I like, in most cases, explaining to people, because they have known Commission for University for a very long time, which is the regulator for the university education subsector in this country. So in a layman language, I normally tell people we are the CUE for TVET. In other words, we are the regulator for the TVET subsector. Yeah, basically, we try to make sure that the TVET sector speaks to the requirement of the stakeholders. In this case, the expectation of the industry, the expectation of the learners, the expectation of the government in terms of the TVET sector providing the skills required for the socio-economic development of this country. So ours is to make sure that we put in place systems that includes accreditation and registration of institution. We look at the curriculum, that it speaks to the demand of the industry. We look at who is training, because the human resource is very critical component towards realization of the skills that we develop. So we do register trainers. We also provide for requirements of who becomes a trainer, which is eligibility criteria for registration, and by extension it informs those who are training that by the time this individual is getting out of our training system, either university or a college, it meets the requirement for registration. And basically we engage stakeholders to get feedback, and that feedback is what we use to provide advisories to government from time to time, either to change policy or to come with new policies, link the relevant stakeholders to what the governments require in terms of engagement.
How many TVETs have you accredited or licensed in the country?
So far, we have close to 2,400, of which around 240 in the Ministry of Education. You've had the government trying to put a TVET in every constituency. So far, we have out of 290, about 52 constituencies without. But in terms of operationalization, because what we register is what is ready to start in terms of infrastructure equipment. So we have about 240, and then in line ministries, we have about another 45 line every ministry. You remember those days, and probably you know, you used to be employed by public service, then you are taken to college, then you come and work. So we have institutions like Bugura, Water Institute, Ahiti, Railway Training Institute. Those are what we call public institutions in line ministries. There are 45. In fact, the youngest is Integrity Academy by ESCC. Then we have close to 1,000 private institutions, and then another 1,000 vocational training centers. These are in counties, what we used to call village polytechnics. Now we call vocational. So in total about 2,400, with a combined total population about 600,000.
Oh, total population is 600,000.
Yes.
How many go in every year?
In every year, okay, it's about 300,000 if you bring in private, and because if you remember the recent released placement by COOPS, we had about 145,000 going to TVET, public TVET institution. But that is basically those who apply directly. We have those who are called walk-in. They see you on a Monday going into institution and they follow you, get admission. But eventually when institution do returns, and then combine with what we have in the private sector, and then we normally don't report many of those who go to vocational training centers, but we have a system of accounting for them. So close to about 300,000. Still, comparing with our population economy, that is still a small number, because for it to be effective, average of between 5 to 10% of the population should be in TVET. So with a population of close to 55 or 50, conservatively 53, then at least minimum 2.5 to 3 million of our young people should be in TVET.
There's often been the concern about the level of skill then that those who go into TVETs will come out with, and what that can compare to. So what have we seen over time then that would lead to that many more people should actually be going to TVETs to get skills that would be useful and relevant in the Kenyan economy or even globally?
Yeah, actually the unique challenges that the challenges that we have in this country is not only unique to us. It's across the globe in terms of how people perceived vocational training. And probably that is the theme of the day, or what we will be discussing. But essentially, the things that sometimes make people not really to look at vocational training as a first choice is how we regard it as a society, and especially in Africa, where we started seeing the white-collar jobs to be associated with the white people. You are a boss, and you're supposed to be in a good office and so forth. So everyone aspired when you want going to school, that I want to go to school, finish school, and then get that white-collar job. Again, the blue-collar job seems to be more punitive because it was mainly associated with the African and the rest. But I think we've tried to change this narrative over time. One of the things that must be done is to have a relevant training system, so that whatever you are learning in the vocational training speaks to what the industry demands. And in that case, when you see the graduates going to get jobs and have a better life, That would be a motivating factor to those who want to go. The second one is in terms of the investment that we put into this institution, in terms of infrastructure and equipment. If you come from somewhere in this country, and sometimes you find some of these institutions like vocational training centers very dilapidated, no infrastructure. No one will want to go and take a photo of especially the young people and put it in the social media that I'm in this institution. So again, what the government is doing is to make sure that there's investment in this institution to facelift the infrastructure, and thirdly is making sure that we improve on our curriculum so that we speak to the demand of the industry. And of course, we also put other incentives like financing, giving these students funding so that you don't really struggle to go through that. Over time, in fact, from the last 4 years, the numbers that went up in public was less than 100,000 sometime 4 years ago to around now about 395,000 in public institutions. And this is attributed to all these initiatives that the government has done.
One of the things that I've often wondered about is when we put the amount of effort and investment in some of these institutions, what is the guarantee that we're actually marrying all these efforts with the needs that the country has? Because every so often you hear from credible sources that there's a bit of a mismatch. You don't have well-trained plumbers.
Yes.
You don't have, I think you know where I'm going with this.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and precisely that is one of the role of the TVET authority, is to make sure that before you approve that curriculum, before you register that institution to train in a specific trade area, there must be relevancy in what we do. Of course, you must have seen there are a lot of changes that have happened in the education and training system in this country right from 2010. One of the things that the 2010 Constitution enshrine is making education and training, especially quality, relevance, access to this education and training as a constitutional requirement. And after that, we made a lot of reforms to come up with the agencies like the TVET Authority. We have Kenya National Qualification Authority, which basically trying to provide us with pathways of education from basic all the way to university. We have Kenya Universities and Colleges and Placements, Central Placement Service, which I think most of you have been dealing with for the last few months in terms of placement of this. So all these were part of the reforms to align our education to the new constitution. We are now trying to put relevance in terms of, I mentioned issues of investment, both in terms of equipment and infrastructure and the trainers. So when we marry the four, infrastructure, equipment, trainer, and curriculum, you are supposed to produce a relevant graduate. The other thing, and which I think we still informative stages in realizing this, is now having a direct engagement with the labor market. What happened in the jurisdiction that have succeeded is having education and training driven by the labor market demand. So we have what we call, for example, in the TVET sector, National Skills Council. National Skills Council mainly constitute industry players. So they normally prescribe what are the requirements in the industry in terms of what we call occupational standards. Occupational standards are performance criteria of works in industry. And then you derive that occupational standards to inform what is goes to curriculum. The other one is establishing what we call the labor market information system. This gather the data of what is required in the labor market now and in future. Because again, training takes sometimes 1 year, 2 years, probably a diploma takes about 3 years. So when you are looking at the future demands of the skills, then when you start crafting a curriculum, you need to be very certain by the time this individual finishes 3 years, he will still be relevant. So that speaks then, that mismatch is where the industry must speak to what the institutions is doing.
From what you've observed, the demand for these courses, is it something that is on an upward trajectory?
Yes. Yeah, that's what I've said. In the last 3 years, we have moved from around 300, less than 100,000 to about 395. But I'm still saying this is still very low compared to. So there is, and there are a lot of aspects that can also push this. If you look at what we consume as a society, both at the family level and even at the institutional level, sometimes we import things that are not even necessary to be imported. The reason is we are not able to probably source them locally. The reason is some of the things that promote what we call investment, local investment, both either by locals or foreign, is among other things the availability of skilled labor, because labor contributes to close to 30 to 40% of productivity in any business. So if you have low quality labor, then it makes your, it contribute to your service as good being expensive. So one of the things that we're looking at it, if we improve the quality of our labor, then we'll be able to attract people who are coming to invest here. And then some of the things that we are importing, which I really don't want to mention. In fact, I've been challenging colleagues. If you walk into a supermarket, for example, from the first shelf, be it be foodstuff, be it be electronics, be it be hardware, very simple things, including utensil, you can see where they come from. There's no magic in terms of how to produce this. So if we fixed a few things here and there, and we are able to produce this locally, then we will increase the number of job opportunities, and that means we will increase the number of demands for vocational training, because we will require more of these people to do these jobs.
So will we be matching our training needs and the outcomes with international standards?
Precisely, and what the Worldskills is doing, and probably the discussion of this. Interestingly, if you look at the history of Worldskills, it started in 1946, somewhere in Spain. And this was immediately after the Second World War. Europe was reconstructing, and there were no skills. So, and even young people were also not interested in going this. So Spain and Portugal thought of an idea of trying to come up with a competition to encourage young people to go to vocational. Then the first competition was in 1950 between Spain and Portugal. I don't know how old you are in 1950, because you look at the only wizard.
I hadn't been born yet, but if we push it 8 years from 50, then we'll get to my birthday.
Okay. We're talking about the 50s.
Yeah.
This is the previous century. Yes.
You are the only wisdom around, based on the proverbs you gave out. So that was the essence of this. And then over time, it went to entire Europe. As we are speaking, there are 85 countries that are members of the Worldskills International. It used to be called, when it started, Worldskills Olympics, because it was mirrored with the Olympics, of athletics and the rest. But because they are going to compete in making items, then eventually, to make it unique and distinct, it was called Worldskills International. We are 85 members now. Kenya is member number 84. We still have one more member who joined after us. And interestingly, out of these 85 member countries, constitute 2/3 of the world population, and controls 90% of the world's GDP. So it means the entire of Europe, the entire of America, most economies in East Asia or in Asia, and a few countries in Africa. We actually Kenya is member number 9 in Africa, and so far the last born. There is no other country after us in 2020. And the countries in Africa is, the first one was South Africa in 1990, which of course you know the history of South Africa. Then it was followed by, I think, Tunisia, Morocco in 90s also. Then around 2010 we had countries like Egypt in 2014, Namibia, just because of their proximity with South Africa in 2011, and all up to 2020. We joined in 2020, but like 2019 Ghana and Uganda. So basically what this, and to answer your question, is Worldskills try to support the development of vocational training by internationalizing the occupational standards, that derive performance criteria of work in industry. They sit and look at these skills. Currently, we have 63 skill sets in Worldskills International that are competed for. And things like floor tiling, wall tiling, carpentry and joinery, these traditional skills, to more advanced artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and so forth. So what the industry look at is assess the performance requirement in the industry, develop these standards, and then give it to institutions to develop their curriculum. When you train, the only other way you know that you have trained and these people are well trained is when you subject them to a task, and it makes it more interesting when they compete. And when they are competing, they look at 3 things in terms of understanding on what you need to do. So we look at the understanding, then how to do it, and for how long. So there are 3 aspects in this: the understanding, and then the actual performance, and the timing of this, because you must complete this task in a given time. So with this vocational, competition or skills competition, we are eventually internationalizing our vocational training, because the occupational standard that we are using here to define the task are the same one which is done in China, in UK, in America, because eventually all these individuals will meet in one point, all of them to compete
globally.
On
the first Worldskills Kenya national competition, let's now go a couple of steps back. Number 1, what is Worldskills and who owns Worldskills?
Okay, good question. Worldskills is a partnership of countries that are promoting vocational training. As I mentioned, the essence of Worldskills that is coming in terms of competition is to create a platform that will attract young people to like and go for vocational training. As you know, what it makes when you go to competition, there are a lot of expectation in terms of what you will achieve, the preparedness, and in the entire process, all this, you'll find that people will have gained vocational training that are at the international level. So these are countries that comes together for the sole reason of promoting vocational training.
Okay.
Yes.
So now the competition. What's the competition?
Now, the competition, as I mentioned earlier on, is at the Worldskills level. Of course, there are certain things that have been done, including competition rules, constitution, and the rest. So what they do is they identify what we call relevant skills to economies. In fact, there are those which we call standards and international skills. And then there are those skills that are generic to certain economies. So they look at those and then develop occupational standards, and then they give to member states to be able to generate what we call tasks to be performed. And then competition, Worldskills competition is done every 2 years. The last one was in Russia in 2019. The second one was supposed to have been in China 2021, but because of COVID, it didn't happen. We pushed it to 2022, but still by 2022 there are issues in China. So we had what they call special edition, so various part of the world hosted pockets of this. So between two competitions, then member states are supposed to organize national competitions, and then other countries other than continent, other than Africa, they have what they call continental competitions, like Worldskills. They have competition. Americas, they call it Americas because it constitutes both North America and South America. Like Worldskills, they're having their competition next week, and after you do national and continental, you prepare a team that goes to international. So the next international competition will be taking place in Lyon, in France next year, having 63 skills areas to be competed. So, as I mentioned, the objective of this is to promote the vocational training. So you have these standards, you design curriculum based on this, you train these individuals, but the only way you attest whether they have learned what they have been learning is to subject them to a competition.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's competing here? Is it the students having been through these tertiary courses then that are competing in terms of their skill and knowledge? Or is it the body itself and in terms of what it's able to deliver in terms of learning that is now competing? So it's the students themselves and what they've learned over time?
Yeah, those who are competing are individuals. We call them competitors. So, for example, this year, this is our inaugural national competition. And of course, when you are starting, you don't want to go big. So this year we are looking at 18 skills areas. Right from we have not masonry, but what we call floor and wall tiling. We have bricklaying, which you design something they have to do, and then you monitor how they do this. And then we have water technology. We have air dressing and beauty therapy. We have mechatronics. We have Industry 4.0. Those are new skills that are coming up. We have CNC lathe, what we call computer, numerical control computer lathe happening, and and many other electrical installation and so forth, cybersecurity, IT network coupling, and the rest. So what will happen is we obtain those what we call occupational standards. We have designs, tasks. For every skills area, we have experts. Some of these experts are our trainers, and some experts are coming from industry, who are the gurus in those specific areas. So we design the task. Then institutions select, because we announce that we are carrying competition in these skills areas. Can institution apply to be able to participate? And we had a selection criteria. And also you assess yourself and see, I have been training these people and I think they meet the requirement for competition.
Yeah.
So after this, we bring them into those which are selected. We have now 4 areas that competition will be happening. And the reason we chose 4 areas is because some of the equipment that are required for competition cannot be moved into a central place. So for Industry 4.0 and mechatronics, we are using Dedan Kimathi University of Technology, because they already have those equipment. And then for cooking, what we call culinary arts and restaurant service, we are using Boma Hospitality College, which is within the Boma Hotel. They have a wing which is for training. And then for CNC lathe, we are using the Technical University of Kenya. So those are essentially 6 skills. The other 12 skills, we are having them at the Kenya School of TVET, where for every skills, there are 5 competitors. We have chosen 5 competitors. So you can see out of the this 18 skills. Yeah, we've close to 100 competitors who are going to be competing. Then they will be doing it for the next 3 days, starting tomorrow up to Thursday, and every day they are performing a given task. The experts are marking, and then we will compile results on Friday, and this is when we'll be recognizing champions. So we will be crowning national champions in specific skills areas, and some of them will be representing Kenya now next year in France, when we'll be having the international skills competition.
Are they not going to the continental one? After
For
winning
Africa,
Kenya?
as I mentioned, for some reason we are still to establish what we call Worldskills Africa. We're actually at an advanced stage, but last year we tried, when the rest of the world were doing special editions. We had the African competition taking place in Namibia, and we presented 4 students or 4 competitors, one in restaurant service, one in cooking. And then there were 2 in skills like mechatronic. They are competed in pairs, so a team constitutes of a pair, because there's a machine to be assembled, there's a program to be written. So when one is writing a program, another one is assembling a machine. So we had 4 competitors, but essentially in 3 skills areas, that is cooking, restaurant service, and mechatronics. And incidentally, for cooking, we had a bronze medal. One of our competitors got bronze medal. And for restaurant service, we had gold medal. The 2 students came from Boma International College of Hospitality. And then the one for mechatronics, we were runners-up, because there were 4 competitors. They will only give medal to gold and and silver. So we were number 3. Actually, winning a medal is an added advantage. More important is the experience that you get, the exposure, and just imagine that I can compete with someone from Ghana, I can compete with someone from South Africa.
I can top the world.
Yeah, I can top the world.
It's a big thing.
That is the most important thing.
Brings in the issue, though, of equity, Bonatiji.
Yeah.
You have 2,400 TVETs.
Yes.
Now, one would expect that all 2,400 are the same in terms of when you talk about equipping them, when you talk about the infrastructure, the facilities, the quality of trainers in those institutions should be the same.
Yes.
But of course it's not, and we know this, right? So even as you talk about now first Worldskills Kenya National Competition, we only expect that the 100 or so will come from specific institutions, and there are some institutions that may not have the opportunity to send their students here, because they do not have that kind of competence that has been taught to them. So what are you doing about that as an authority?
First, we had to start somewhere. And you can see last year, the reason why we chose the Boma was Boma has some relationship with some institution in Switzerland. So they have always been working on competition, and they have been sending their students for international competition. So we had to start somewhere. Also, Deda and Kimathi, working with a number of partners in industry, they have also been organizing internal competition. That is how we picked the first team that went to Namibia. This year, using the experience that we had in Namibia, and how we have been developing our experts, because the critical part of competitions is actually having experts. So when we became the members of Worldskills International in 2020, the rule is that you are supposed to be mentored by an existing member. So we were lucky that German accepted to mentor us, and UK. So currently being mentored, so training our experts and the rest. So that he was able to build at least a team that were able to train a number of competitors in an institution. Moving from 4 last year to around 100 is a very big plus. And the lessons that we are learning, again, in this competition in terms of preparedness and so forth, immediately after this competition, probably next month or October, we are going to have what we are calling a closure conference to really look at what went on right, what we missed, what need to be done, then informed subsequent competition. And what we are planning, working together with the Association of Technical Training Institutions in the country, is we are now creating a national calendar for competition, because this competition will be happening every year. As I mentioned, between two international competition, you have to do national and international, and continental. So what we will be planning here in the country is we'll probably divide the country into about 6 regions, so that we start with regional competitions in different parts of the country. And then those who will emerge winners in their respective regions, they will now come to national. And then the national champions now will represent the country in the continental and international. And the rule for, unlike other sports, for Worldskills International is that you participate once in an international event. Whether you are still a student, so long as you have already gone to the international competition, you do once. The reason is to give others an opportunity to do it, to access that.
You see, though, what it's doing is that it's exposing our local TVETs to this international benchmarking.
Yes.
Right? Which is a good thing. But then when we come back, do we actually have this conversation of what we have learned and what we have seen? We have had these partnerships. The Germans have been here. The Germans have said they are offering to support us with the Kiambu Institute of Science and Technology. Yes. In upgrading it, in giving us the equipment and all. We have had Japanese with JICA supporting several institutions. If you look at what Dedan Kimathi has done, it's because of support from external. It seems like unless support comes from external, we cannot do some things ourselves.
Well, it's not really.
Why don't we have more well-equipped labs, workshops in all our TVETs? Why don't we have better trained trainers in all our TVETs? Why?
Well, I mean, everything is an aspect of resource. But as I mentioned, if you look at the kind of investment that the government has put in the last 10 years precisely, after 2010, around before actually to 2013, that is when we started the additional 13 institutions. We only had 42 TVET institutions in their country. And out of that 42, about 15 or so were the former technical secondary schools, like Kisumu Technical School, Sikalagala, Mawego. You know, when the change of the old system to 844, the technical secondary school became a technical training institution. Then we had the old Institute of Technologies, which was basically built on more or less the community colleges in North America. And they also, in total, they were 42. And you could see that will not be able to take all the youths that we had. And of course, we had a very sharp population growth. That is why then government started building this. So we are talking of the first 60 institution and 70, and then we had another 13. So you can see it was about almost 139 or so institutions that were developed in the last probably about 7 years. And we will be increasing capacities in this institution. The government also equipped this 139 new institutions with state-of-the-art equipment. Then what we realized later on, because our role as an authority is also to look at in terms of audits of what is happening in our institution. So we realized a number of equipment were not in use because of the capacity of our trainers. Then again, working with the government and development partners like African Development Bank, the Kenya School of TVET has been working on the capacity building of our trainers, the program that has taken almost 1 year, including the training them in the new methodologies of training called competent-based, just similar as CBC, but now this is competent-based education and training. So we are already seeing all these things happening. And the fact that we are now able even to get 100 students being subjected to compete in an international event, which is based on international criteria. Because when you are competing, the same way when you are selecting people to compete in Olympics, there are certain standards that the Olympics expect a country to meet or athletes or individual to meet before you qualify for international event. So same case, the criteria we are subjecting these individuals is the same as what is being subjected elsewhere. And therefore it is going to inform the quality of the training that we are going to offer to these individuals.
What happens after the competition? What have you seen has happened after the competition for students who have performed well, gold medals like you're talking about, in terms of career paths, career pathways for the future? And what could it possibly mean for these students who go into these competitions who are obviously performing well? Where have you been able to track and say that as a result, we see that they've been placed in this particular job place, or they've been able to do 1, 2, 3 in terms of an entrepreneur? What does it do for them futurely? And what can you hope it will do for Kenya's graduates from these institutions for jobs for the future? Because it is an issue.
Yeah, what happens essentially, actually, when you go to competition area, there are 3 things that normally happens. There is the actual competition itself. There are TVET conferences where you bring international speakers discussing pertinent issues, policies, industry engagement, and so forth. And there is exhibition. And most of these exhibitions come from industry players. In fact, every competition is basically sponsored by industry players, big players like Google, you have Samsung and the rest. They are major players. So what happened is that most of them are also scouting for most performing individual to be employed. And you find most of them actually end up being picked during competitions. Like, for example, the gentleman who got bronze medal in Namibia, the Kenyan young man, is currently in America. He's been taken by one of the top hotels in America for a 1-year internship, and which eventually is going to land into hospitality, employment. The lady who had won gold medal in restaurant service, by the time we were leaving Namibia, a few hotels in South Africa had already started engaging her. But she had not finished her training. She had to come back home and finish her training. So that kind of exposure actually give these people an opportunity to engage or get employment directly. So we expect even this. We have so many industry players that are going to be exhibiting during our competition, and some of them are going to be looking for people to employ. This is an individual you have already seen is performing. Yeah. What more else do you require other than that?
You know, I'm glad you're talking about the food industry, the hospitality industry.
Yes.
Because I am looking at the informal aspect of the hospitality industry. You're talking about food kiosks.
Yeah.
You're talking about where the majority of people eat. And I'm looking at this expertise being brought to that level. The consideration of providing an opportunity for these people who already have the skills to start these businesses, not maybe as an individual, but as groups. Not everybody can go to Boma, but everybody can go to Akibanda. Everyone, literally.
Yes.
So that when you think of that quality that we're speaking of, that one wins medals, now I'm thinking of it cascading to where the Mwananchi, who eats where he can afford, can actually eat that quality of food.
Yes, precisely. You see, like, as I mentioned, one of the things that skills competition bring is to relook at our training system, whether it's measurable to what is required. And we are going to generally review the entire training curriculum, including the training in Vocational Training Center, so that anyone who is, by extension, anyone who is coming out of our training institution at least has a knowledge that measure to that international requirement, so that even tomorrow I finished in one of our technical training colleges and I go and start my kiosk somewhere, at least the skills that you have in terms of the hygiene, the quality of food, the variety of food that you can offer to attract your customers. So we'll see the quality of things that we are doing at all levels improving.
You know, even if you go beyond food, I know our time is running out, but look at every course that is offered within TVET. One, I'm supposing that they also offered business skills, business training skills as part of their training, so that they can actually employ this in a business.
Some basic entrepreneurship.
Yes, but I'm thinking of the technical aspects. Just think broadly of what could happen to what we call the Juakali sector when you infuse it. We already have it. But think of the international standards seeping into that particular sector and look at how vibrant it would actually make it.
That is where we are heading.
That's where we're heading.
Yes, we're heading. But I like one thing that, and what you mentioned. Actually now, in looking at the global standard of vocational training, you have both technical skills and what we call the transferable skills or employability skills. And the calling is technical skills get you hired or employed. Transferable skills or employment skills get you fired. Because you are supposed also to understand the environment at which you are working. So critical thinking, problem solving,
interpersonal
teamwork,
relations.
Interpersonal. And then the other thing what we are doing when we are designing curriculum is to include those things, including environmental and sustainability skills, so that you make sure that you not only learn skills, but you also take care of the environment at which you are working in.
Very good.
Thank you.
Dr. Hari, thank you very much for joining us. And we wish you all the best as, and in fact, the 100 who will be participating in this, we wish them all the best as they compete here, as they go to Lyon, France. We want to see goals coming back to the country.
Yeah.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.